Jim Jones. Who is Jim Jones? Like, he's not on anyone's top 10 list. He's not like no one's top 10 list, maybe not even his family.
Scared to hustle because niggas is snitching so much. Maybe that's what's going on. I would be scared to hustle too when I know that every other nigga is snitching just so he don't want to do no time because he's can't bear to be inside the jail.
Is listed as a federal informant in court documents in the case against Tekashi. In the original court transcripts that were previously released online, the conversation between individual one, Jim Jones, is listed as cooperating with federal agents in a conversation with Jamal Malmurder Jones, which would explain why Jim Jones has been able to have such a lengthy criminal record and avoid prison time in the past.
Rapper Jim Jones is straight up named as a federal informant in official court docs from the Tekashi case. Yeah, it's right there in the transcripts that hit the internet a while back. In a recorded convo with Jamal Malmurder Jones, Jim, who's labeled as Individual One, is out here sounding like he's working with the feds. Now it kind of makes sense how Jim's managed to stack up a crazy rap sheet and still dodge any real prison time over the years. But it gets even messier, because just recently, an old audio clip of Jay-Z leaked, and he's flat out calling Jim a snitch. Wild, right? But hold up. Jay-Z's top exec at Roc Nation, she's already known to have cooperated with the feds too. So why is Jay pointing fingers now? And why go after Jim all of a sudden? All this started flaring back up after Jim ran his mouth about Nas, disrespecting a living legend. That's when folks started digging up his past again, dropping receipts, transcripts, the whole nine, proving Jim really did cooperate with the feds. But here's what's got everybody scratching their heads. If Jay-Z really stands against snitches, why is he keeping informants so close? And more importantly, why hand Jim Jones a Roc Nation deal if he knew all this? Something ain't adding up. Let's kick it off with the leaked audio clip that reignited all this heat. In the resurfaced clip, Jay-Z talks about his issues with Jim Jones, and he doesn't hold back. Jay flat out says Jim ain't even a real rapper to him. He said Jim doesn't even register as a peer in the rap game because what he represents in the industry ain't music. That line alone had people doing double takes. So what exactly did Jay mean by that? Was he throwing subtle shade about Jim being tied up in things beyond music, like working with the feds? And if Jay already had that kind of dirt on Jim, why bring him under Roc Nation later on? That's the question that got everybody talking. Now about those snitch rumors. Yeah, they've been circulating for years. But trust 50 Cent to keep the spotlight burning. 50 jumped on IG and posted a pic with Jim, Jay-Z, Diddy, Fat Joe, and others, then clowned Jim hard in the caption. He wrote, LOL Individual One calling the shots out here. I know you working, so please don't say gangster stuff to me. Individual One. That Individual One jab, it goes right back to those court docs where Jim was allegedly labeled as someone cooperating with the feds. This drama all ties into the Tekashi 6991 case. When 6999 was on trial for racketeering and gun charges, he flipped and started cooperating to save himself. That's when a wiretapped phone call hit the public. Jim Jones was heard on the line saying Tekashi ain't gang no more and needs to get violated. That right there had people side-eyeing Jim hard. And it didn't stop there. T.I. jumped in and posted the full transcript of that wiretap, adding more fuel to the whole situation. Now rewind to 2018. Tekashi and several members of the 9 Trey Bloods got swept up in a major federal case. The feds had been watching the crew for a long time, waiting to make their move. And once they had 6ix9ine in custody, he didn't hesitate. He flipped instantly and started naming names to save his neck. Back in September 2019, during Tekashi 6ix9ine's explosive courtroom testimony, he went full-blown tell-all. On the stand, he dropped names like Anthony Harv Ellison, Al Jeremiah, Nuke Mack, and a few more key players in the 9 Trey gang. He didn't just point fingers, he gave the feds a whole blueprint of how 9 Trey moved in the streets. So, where does Jim Jones come into all this? His name got dragged right into the mess when one of the FBI wiretap recordings was played in court. In that tape, Jim was allegedly on the line with Jamal Malmurder Jones, another major figure in 9 Trey. And what were they talking about? Handling Tekashi after he publicly announced he was distancing himself from the gang? Jim was heard saying that Tekashi needs to be violated, a statement that shook the room. It wasn't just casual talk, it sounded like serious plotting. That audio raised major eyebrows because it didn't just link Jim to gang members, it had him on tape talking potential retaliation. But here's the part that had everybody stunned. How did Jim Jones end up on a federal wiretap discussing gang-related business and still walk away untouched? No charges, no court dates, nothing. So after the trial wrapped, folks started asking the real question: how does someone get caught on tape like that and still not get indicted, while everyone else around him went down hard? It didn't add up. Naturally, people started whispering. Maybe Jim was working with the feds behind the scenes, or at least saying enough to stay out of trouble. And no one pushed that theory louder than Wack 100. He went all in, accusing Jim of playing both sides. Wack 100 didn't hold back. He flat out called Jim Jones a federal informant. He claimed the only reason Jim never got cuffed was because he was working with law enforcement behind the scenes. Wack doubled down on Clubhouse in interviews and even in convos with Tekashi himself. He dared Jim to prove otherwise. Said if he really wasn't cooperating, then show the receipts. And Wack's not just talking wild. He pointed out that the audio is out there in the public, used during Tekashi's trial. You can go online and hear it for yourself. Both Tekashi and Wack asked the same question everyone else has been asking. If Jim was on that wiretap talking about getting Tekashi violated, how is he still walking free? The only way that makes sense, according to them, is if Jim did cooperate in some way during the case. Things got even messier when Tekashi tried to bring up Desiree Perez, Roc Nation CEO, and make some bold claims about her past. But Wack quickly cut him off before he could spill too much on that front. And just when you thought it couldn't get hotter, another name jumped into the mix. Former Dipset member Jaja. She poured even more gas on the flames, saying she had receipts showing that Jim actually set up his own homie Mel Murder. That's right, she's claiming Jim turned on his own team to save himself. Now that the whole Jim Jones snitch saga is out in the open, let's bring this back to Jay-Z. Because if there was a setup brewing, it might go way deeper than people realize. You gotta rewind and look at the real history between Jay and Jim. This beef been simmering for over a decade. It all started back in the early 2000s. In 2002, Dame Dash brought Cameron and Jim Jones into Rockefeller Records. That's when things got tense. Jim claimed Cam was promised a vice president role at the label, but Jay-Z never co-signed that move. When asked, Jay told the press, "That's not taking effect as of yet. I think the talk is a little premature." Cold. And get this, while Jay was still beefing heavy with Nas, he tried to hop on a remix of Cam and Jewel Santana's hit Oh Boy. His verse, full of slick shots aimed at Nas, but Cam and Jim weren't feeling it. They shut it down and refused to release the remix. Cam even cut Jay's verse off completely and later said he wasn't about to let Jay use their record to fight his battles. That right there, it set the whole tone moving forward. Cam and Jim felt like Jay didn't respect them at all. That's when the sneak disses started flying. Jim Jones took it to the interviews, hit the airwaves, and started dragging Jay, calling him corporate, soft, and completely out of touch with the streets, and he didn't stop there. Jim made it a point to show he stood for real ones and claimed to be about integrity and the code of the streets. Meanwhile, he painted Jay as someone who'd lost his roots in the game. So if Jay saw a chance to flip the spotlight on Jim and let that informant talk resurface, it might have been personal. Real personal. Jim Jones always prided himself on keeping it real, and he never held back when it came to calling out rappers he saw as fake or turning into snitches. He took shots at anybody he thought stepped outside the street code, making it clear where he stood. At first, Jay-Z didn't clap back. He stayed silent, keeping it cool, but everyone knew there was smoke brewing behind the scenes at Rockefeller. Then in 2006, Jim dropped his biggest hit, We Fly High. The anthem went crazy. That's when Jay finally broke his silence and fired back with his own response track, Brooklyn High. But Jim wasn't backing down. He clapped back again with We Fly High beef mix, and this time he went directly at Hov. He didn't sugarcoat it either. Jim mocked Jay's age, calling him washed up and even threatening him with bars like, "I told Warning your old A to chill, better slow down before your old A gets killed." Asterisk, that diss had the whole industry watching. By 2008, the beef spilled out of the booth and into real life. That's when security footage caught Jim getting physical with someone inside a Louis Vuitton store. Turns out, it wasn't just any dude. It was Jay-Z's longtime A&R, Lenny Santiago. Jim ended up getting arrested and later pled guilty to misdemeanor assault. Jay still kept it slick. He didn't speak on the situation directly, but a few months later, he threw shade in an XXL interview. When asked about the state of rap, Jay said tracks like Nah 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 were what's dragging the culture down, he said. I mean, like Jim Jones, for example, and I don't mean this just because we don't see eye to eye. He made Nah 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 Nah. What's the difference between that and Smiley Face by Trey Songz or Soulja Boy? Jay mocked Jim's biggest hit by saying it could have easily been called Smiley Face. After that interview, things went quiet between them, but not for long. By 2015, Dipset was stirring again, and the tension wasn't done yet. Dipset fired things right back up when they dropped a freestyle over Diddy's classic Victory beat. Cameron and Jim Jones took aim at Jay-Z again, this time clowning the Roc Nation brunch, throwing slick jabs at how soft and corporate Jay had become. They mocked his whole polished image like they were still in the trenches while Jay was off sipping champagne with billionaires. But then, things took a wild left turn. Out of nowhere, Jim switched up and started begging for a seat at the Roc Nation table. Yup, after 13 years of non-stop shots and sneak disses, Jim signed with Jay's Roc Nation in February 2017. Just like that, he jumped from hater to team member. And Jim didn't do it quietly either. He was loud with it. Started flexing all over the gram, bragging about getting that exclusive invite to the Roc Nation brunch, the same event he used to tear apart. Suddenly, Jim was out here giving Jay his flowers, talking about how much he respected him and acting like the beef never even happened. But Jay still stayed stone cold, barely said a word about the deal. No welcome post, no celebration, nothing. It was obvious Jay was keeping it all business and making sure folks didn't get the wrong idea. He wasn't trying to play besties. Now here's where it gets spicy. Some people believe Jay didn't sign Jim as a peace offering. They say it was a strategic chess move, because if there's one thing Jay-Z's been known to do, it's absorb his rivals and neutralize the threat. And Jim might have just walked straight into it. Think about it. The LIX, Fat Joe, J. Cole, Meek Mill, they all had beef or tension with Jay-Z at some point, but in the end, they all signed with Roc Nation. That's just how Jay plays the game. He turns his old rivals into business partners. Now when it comes to Jim Jones, things felt a little different. Yeah, Jay brought him into the Roc Nation circle, but he still kept Jim at arm's length. No public shout-outs, no real connection, just silence. So why the distance? Was Jay trying to protect his image because of Jim's name being tied to that Tekashi situation and all the snitching rumors? But here's where it gets real sticky. Jay's whole "I don't mess with snitches" energy might just be a front. Because let's not forget, his right-hand woman and the president of Roc Nation, Desiree Perez, is officially documented as a federal informant. So now people are asking, if Jay is cool doing business with someone who definitely worked with the feds, then what's the real reason he ghosted Jim Jones over rumors? And that's when a deeper theory started bubbling. What if Jay's moves were never about loyalty or who snitched and who didn't? What if it's always been about control? Jay didn't need Jim Jones, but Jim definitely needed Jay. So when Jim's name popped up in those wiretaps, Jay didn't get mad. He just did what he always does, protect the brand. Maybe Jay wasn't mad that Jim might have snitched. Maybe he was mad Jim wasn't his snitch. And that flips the whole script. Now people are looking sideways at Roc Nation and wondering, what kind of empire is Jay really running? So now the streets are asking, was Jim Jones just another pawn in Jay-Z's master plan? Did Hov bring him in just to silence him, keep him close and control the narrative? Or was this whole deal just a trap dressed up as an opportunity? Because one thing's clear, every move Jay makes is calculated. From turning rivals into allies, to keeping his distance when things get too messy. And when that wiretap dropped and Jim's name hit those Fed transcripts, Jay didn't defend him, he didn't support him, he went ghost. And the craziest part, while Jim was out here praising Jay, flexing brunch invites and repping Roc Nation like family, Jay barely blinked. No loyalty, just business. Maybe Jim thought he made it to the table, but he was never in the room where the real decisions were made. So is Roc Nation a record label or a chessboard? And how many more artists got played without even knowing it? The truth might never come out. But one thing's for sure, this saga ain't just about rap. It's about power, silence, and who's really pulling the strings behind the scenes. For more untold stories, street politics, and hip-hop heat the mainstream won't touch, tap in with BarzBuzz. We don't just report the headlines, we dig into the dirt.